a bottle of iced tea. That's all Tori Moore wanted when he walked into that Silver Spring convenience store on a cold December afternoon. But what happened next would expose a secret so horrifying that veteran SWAT officers would need counseling after the discovery. Bang, bang, bang. 3 shots fired, 1 store clerk dead. And across the street in apartment 809, the decomposing body of a pregnant woman who had been missing for 8 weeks without anyone knowing she was gone. This isn't just another murder case. This is the story of how a 26-year-old woman named Denise Middleton vanished from the world while living just feet away from her neighbors, how her killer walked free for 2 months, even going grocery shopping and visiting friends, while her body lay rotting in their shared bedroom, and how it took the random murder of a complete stranger to finally uncover the truth. Welcome to Trending Tragedies. I'm your narrator, and today we're going deep into one of the most disturbing domestic violence cases in Maryland history. If you're new here, we focus on relationship murders that expose the deadly reality of intimate partner violence. Hit subscribe now, because these stories need to be heard, and they might just save someone's life. The elevator doors close. October 9th, 2022, 7:03 p.m. Denise Middleton steps inside with her boyfriend, Tori Moore. She's 8.5 months pregnant, her belly round with the son she's decided to name Ezekiel. In the security footage, you can see her move to the far corner of the elevator, away from Moore. Her hands come up to her face. She's wiping away tears. Moore stands rigid, controlling, aggressive. When another resident tries to enter the elevator, Moore physically blocks them. The doors open on the 8th floor. Denise walks out slowly. So slowly that the elevator doors almost close on her. She doesn't want to go to that apartment. Every instinct is telling her something terrible is about to happen. Those elevator cameras just recorded the last 47 seconds of Denise Middleton's life. But to understand how we got to this moment, we need to go back. Because this story didn't start with murder. It started with love, or what Denise thought was love. At 26, Denise was the kind of person who lit up rooms. Her sister Chanita remembers her as loving and caring, excited to have her first child. Denise worked in fashion and beauty, always impeccably put together, always ready with a compliment for someone having a bad day. She was also 8 months pregnant and planning a future with a man who should have been in prison. Tori Damien Moore had a record that read like a catalog of violence: armed robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, kidnapping, drug dealing, illegal firearms possession. The man was a walking red flag factory. But here's the thing about domestic violence. It doesn't announce itself with a criminal background check. It starts with charm, with promises, with isolation disguised as protection. Moore was 31, 5 years older than Denise, and he knew exactly how to make her feel special. He also knew how to make her feel afraid. Just 4 months before her murder, Norfolk police had issued a warrant for Moore's arrest. The charge? Aggravated assault. The victim? Denise herself. According to police reports, Moore had punched and then choked her for about 3 minutes to the point she could not breathe. 3 minutes. Try holding your breath for 30 seconds and imagine someone's hands around your throat for 6 times that long. Denise pressed charges, then she took him back. This is the part that's hard for people to understand. Why do victims return to their abusers? Why didn't Denise just leave? The answer is complex, but here's one piece. When you're pregnant, vulnerable, and isolated from your support system, leaving feels impossible. Especially when your abuser has convinced you that no one else would want you, that you need him to survive, that he's sorry and it won't happen again. Moore was smart about his abuse. He escalated gradually. A push here, a slap there, then choking that left Denise gasping for air. By the time she realized how dangerous he was, she was trapped in an apartment lease, financially dependent and carrying his child. The Enclave Silver Spring Apartments should have been their fresh start. Apartment 809 on Oak Leaf Drive, a 1-bedroom unit with views of the parking lot and the Shell gas station across the street. Denise probably imagined bringing baby Ezekiel home to this place, setting up a crib, taking those first photos. Instead, it became her tomb. The last person to see Denise alive was a neighbor who passed them in the lobby. She later told police that Moore was dragging Denise toward the elevators, that Denise looked scared and upset. The neighbor thought about saying something. She still regrets that she didn't. At 7:03 p.m., they entered that elevator. By 8:15 p.m., Moore was back in the lobby alone, captured on security cameras looking calm and collected. His first Google search, typed into his phone just minutes after leaving the building, shooting Enclave Apartments news. He was checking to see if anyone had called the police. What happened in apartment 809 during that hour and 12 minutes? The autopsy tells part of the story. 7 gunshot wounds, 4 to the back, close range, execution style. Moore later admitted to police that he had been choking Denise when she wouldn't stop acting out. He said he pushed her outside the building, then slapped and choked her inside the apartment. His story kept changing, but the physical evidence didn't lie. This wasn't a crime of passion. This wasn't self-defense. This was methodical murder. After killing Denise and her unborn son, Moore did something that still haunts investigators. He covered her body with a blanket and left it on the bedroom floor. Then he went online and started researching. How long before body starts to stink? How to move dead body without being seen? How long does it take for a dead body to smell? These weren't idle curiosity searches. These were the calculations of a killer trying to figure out his next move. Moore's solution was simple: run away and let time solve the problem. For the next 26 days, Moore traveled across the country, North Carolina first, then all the way to California. He took buses, stayed in cheap motels, and continued his research. His phone records show him checking news coverage of missing persons reports in Maryland. He was looking to see if anyone had noticed Denise was gone. No one had. Think about that for a moment. A pregnant woman vanishes, and for nearly 2 months, no one reports her missing. No welfare checks, no concerned calls to police. Denise had become so isolated in her relationship with Moore that when she disappeared, the world didn't notice. On November 13th, Moore returned to Silver Spring. He walked back into apartment 809, where Denise's body was exactly where he'd left it. The decomposition was advanced. The smell was overwhelming. Mice had moved in. Moore moved back in too. For the next 3 weeks, he lived in that apartment with Denise's remains. He slept there. He cooked there. He brought friends over. He acted like nothing had happened. His neighbors later told police they never suspected anything. No strange smells made it into the hallway. No sounds of distress. No reason to call authorities. Moore had successfully hidden his crime in plain sight. If he had just stayed quiet, just kept living his double life, he might never have been caught. But on December 8th, 2022, Tori Moore made a fatal mistake. He got thirsty.
Montgomery County Police are now dealing with a possible triple death investigation.
Police went to arrest the suspect in yesterday's fatal gas station shooting and allegedly found a decomposing body inside of his apartment.
Our Stephanie Ramirez is live at police headquarters with more on this disturbing story. Stephanie, what have you learned?
Well, Rob, Angie, Montgomery County Police Chief Marcus Jones says the suspect waived his rights after he was arrested and told police that the woman whose body was found was a girlfriend, that she was about 8 months pregnant, and that the two had an argument about a month ago. Now, police did not share her name. They tell us they're waiting for the medical examiner to confirm the exact cause of death, whether she was pregnant, and also confirm her identity. So there could be more charges further down the line. The suspect right now, though, he is arrested, and he is facing first-degree murder for the shooting death of the Silver Spring Shell gas station dash-in employee. This is the photo of the suspect arrested, 31-year-old Tori Moore. The gas station is actually right across the street from the suspect's apartment where he was arrested. Now, we went to that Enclave apartment building earlier today. There was immediate foul odor that you could smell when you entered. His front door was completely smashed in. SWAT had served a no-knock warrant overnight. Police tracked Moore to his apartment building from the New Hampshire Avenue gas station and convenience store across the street, where at around 3 p.m. yesterday, Chief Jones says the suspect went to get an iced tea. He and an employee got into an argument. The chief says, according to video viewed, Moore began throwing items at the clerk. The clerk picks up a metal pole behind the counter to hit Moore. Police saying that Moore then took out a gun and shot the clerk at point-blank range. The suspect reportedly then reached over the counter, where he continued to shoot and allegedly grabbed the iced tea and left after.
To literally have a dispute over a container of iced tea at a convenience store, and to have it rise to the level of a dispute that an individual would then pull out a handgun and brutally murder someone in broad daylight is just very troubling to me.
And officials say employees tell them that they had problems with the suspect at that store in the past. The clerk who was killed, he was identified as 61-year-old Ayolu Wondimu of Silver Spring. On the woman whose body was found, we're told no one had reported her missing. The suspect is due in court on Monday. It's back to you.
The Shell station across from his apartment had banned Moore months earlier. He wasn't welcome there. But that Thursday afternoon, he walked in anyway. He wanted a bottle of iced tea, and he wasn't going to let store policy stop him. Behind the counter stood Ayolu Wondimu, a 61-year-old clerk who had worked there for years. Wondimu was known as gentle, hardworking, polite. He had no idea he was about to encounter a triple murderer. Moore grabbed his iced tea and approached the register. Immediately, an argument broke out. The store security cameras captured everything that happened next. Moore started throwing energy drink bottles at Wondimu. When the clerk tried to defend himself with a metal pole, Moore stepped back, reached into his jacket, and pulled out a silver handgun. The same gun he had used to kill Denise 2 months earlier. The first shot hit Wondimu in the chest. The clerk fell behind the counter, mortally wounded. But Moore wasn't finished. He walked closer, leaned over the counter, and fired 2 more shots downward into Wondimu's body. Then he picked up his iced tea and walked out like nothing had happened. Ayolu Wondimu died for a bottle of iced tea and a man's wounded pride. But Moore's impulsive violence had just exposed his carefully hidden secret. Within hours, police had identified him from surveillance footage. By dawn the next morning, SWAT teams were gathering outside apartment 809. December 9th, 2022, 6:47 a.m., Officer Michael Henry and his team forced entry into Moore's apartment with a no-knock warrant. They expected to find a murder suspect. They found something much worse. Moore was asleep on a bare mattress in the living room. He surrendered without resistance, almost like he was relieved it was finally over. But as officers swept the apartment, they noticed a large lump on the bedroom floor covered by a comforter. Thinking someone might be hiding, Officer Henry shouted, "Show me your hands!" When his partner lifted that blanket, the smell hit them immediately. Then they saw what Moore had been living with for 8 weeks. Denise Middleton's decomposing body, 8.5 months pregnant, surrounded by mice and the overwhelming stench of death. They were prepared to find the defendant, Tori Moore, inside that apartment, Prosecutor James Dietrich later told the jury. But what they weren't prepared for was to find the rotting corpse of Denise Middleton on the floor of the defendant's bedroom. Detective Dmitry Ruvin questioned Moore hours later. When asked about the body, Moore's response was chilling in its casualness. "That was my girlfriend." No emotion, no remorse, just a matter-of-fact acknowledgement that he had been living with her corpse for 2 months. The investigation that followed would uncover the full scope of Moore's crimes. Ballistics confirmed that the same weapon had killed both Denise and Ayolu Wondimu. The medical examiner determined that Denise's unborn son, Ezekiel, was fully viable at 38 weeks gestation. This last detail would make legal history. Montgomery County had never prosecuted anyone for the murder of an unborn child. But Ezekiel's viability meant he could have survived outside the womb. In the eyes of the law, Moore hadn't just killed Denise. He had committed triple murder. Moore's phone records told the story of a calculating killer, his immediate post-murder searches, his cross-country travel while monitoring news coverage, his research into body disposal and decomposition. This wasn't a man who had lost control in a moment of rage. This was someone who had planned, executed, and covered up multiple murders with methodical precision. The legal proceedings moved through the courts with unusual speed for such a complex case. Moore's mental competency was initially questioned. Defense attorneys argued that anyone who could live with a decomposing body for months must be severely mentally ill. But psychiatric evaluations revealed a different picture. Moore understood the charges against him. He could assist in his defense. He knew right from wrong. His ability to plan and execute his cover-up demonstrated clear thinking and calculation. In May 2024, Moore was convicted of first-degree murder for killing Ayolu Wondimu. The convenience store surveillance footage left no room for doubt. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. But it was the trial for Denise and Ezekiel's murders that would break new ground. In November 2024, prosecutors presented their case with methodical precision. They showed the jury that final elevator footage of Denise, tears on her face, moving away from Moore, in fear. They presented ballistics evidence, linking the same gun to both crime scenes. They detailed Moore's internet searches and his attempts to cover up the murders. The defense didn't deny that Moore had killed Denise and Ezekiel. Instead, they argued it wasn't premeditated. This case is a tragedy, defense attorney Victoria Kawecki told the jury. It is overwhelmingly sad that Toria ended Denise's life and by extension prevented his child from starting his. But the evidence told a different story. Moore's calculated behavior after the murders, his research into body disposal, his cross-country travel while monitoring news coverage, all of it pointed to a man who knew exactly what he had done and was trying to get away with it. After less than 2 hours of deliberation, the jury returned guilty verdicts on all counts. Moore became the first person in Montgomery County history to be convicted of murdering a viable unborn child. 3 jurors later spoke to reporters about their decision. They had briefly considered lesser charges for Ezekiel's death, but ultimately concluded that Moore had to know he was killing the unborn child as he fired 7 shots into Denise. May 30th, 2025, the sentencing hearing that would finally close this horrific chapter. Montgomery County Circuit Judge Rachel McGuckian faced a man who had destroyed 3 families with his violence. The courtroom was packed with relatives of all 3 victims. Denise Middleton, Denise's father, spoke about the grandson he would never meet. "We didn't lose her," he said, "we were robbed of her." Chinita Coates, Denise's sister, remembered a woman excited to have her first child, Ezekiel, who would never have that opportunity. Ayolu Wondimu's widow described her husband as my everything and said she was heartbroken by his senseless death. Throughout the hearing, Moore sat silent. He offered no apology, no explanation, no insight into what had driven him to commit such horrific acts. Judge McGuckian's sentence reflected the gravity of his crimes: 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, plus 80 additional years. 1 life sentence for Denise, 1 for baby Ezekiel, 1 for Ayolu Wondimu. The consecutive nature meant that even if 1 conviction were overturned, Moore would still die in prison. "We're left to wonder why he did what he did," Judge McGuckian observed. "And really no one knows but him, and maybe not even him." As the gavel fell, Moore's reign of terror was finally over. The Denise Middleton case changed everything. It established legal precedent for prosecuting fetal homicide in Montgomery County. It highlighted the deadly escalation of domestic violence during pregnancy. It showed how abusers can isolate their victims so completely that they can disappear without anyone noticing. But beyond the legal and social implications, this case leaves us with painful questions about the warning signs we ignore, the victims we fail to protect, and the violence that thrives in silence. Denise Middleton was 2 weeks away from holding her son. She had already picked out his name, decorated his nursery, imagined his future. Ayolu Wondimu was working an ordinary shift at a convenience store, serving customers and earning an honest living. Their lives ended because one man couldn't control his rage, couldn't accept that his girlfriend might want to leave, couldn't tolerate any challenge to his authority. If you know someone in an abusive relationship, don't wait for them to ask for help. The National Domestic Violence Hotline is available 24/7 at 1-800-799-7233. Sometimes a single call can prevent a tragedy. Today, new tenants live in apartment 809. The Shell station across the street has been renovated. Life has moved on. But the families of Denise, Ezekiel, and Ayolu carry their loss every day. This has been Trending Tragedies, where we honor victims by telling their stories with truth and respect. If this case has affected you, please subscribe and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because domestic violence thrives in silence, and these stories need to be told. Until next time, remember, love doesn't hurt, control isn't care, and if you see something, say something. It might save 3 lives.